A very good morning to one and all, my dear esteemed colleagues, faculty members, and fellow literature enthusiasts. This is Dr. Pratyush Ranjan Padi from MIT University, Chhattisgarh, from the MIT School of Languages. Today, we are at the fourth day of our FDP. With great pleasure and excitement, we gather here virtually for the captivating FDP on the rich and enchanting topic that is global perspective in literature and global cinema. Today, as a community of passionate readers, writers, research scholars who understand the power and significance of literature in our lives, whether you are a seasoned literary connoisseur or someone just beginning to explore the vast landscape of literature, I believe today's topic, global perspective on cinema and movie, would be a brilliant start to delve into the literary world through various perspectives. Hence, without further delay, let me introduce you to our first speaker of the day, Dr. Sajauddin Nijamuddin, who is a senior assistant professor in the Center for Diaspora Studies at the Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar, India. And he was a visiting research fellow on June 2022 at the Center for South Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, University of Illinois, USA, and in the Summer Institute Fellow at the June 2022. At the Institute of Israel Studies at Brandeis University, USA, he has also worked. Presently, he is a visiting fellow at University of Religion and Denomination, Iran. His area of interest includes international migration, diaspora, refugee, South Asia, South Asian diaspora, citizenship, nation, nationalism, and transnationalism, Indian and Chinese diaspora, Jewish diaspora, Muslim diaspora, comparative diaspora studies, contemporary English literature, contemporary literary and cultural theory, interdisciplinary studies and research methodology, and so on, so on. He has presented his research papers at various national and international conferences, attended summer schools, participated in workshops, training programs, delivered lectures in different capacities in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Germany, Poland, Taiwan, Austria, Italy, Sweden, Turkey, Croatia, Iraq, USA, and other parts of the whole world. So he has around 20 research articles to his credit. He has received various fellowships and awards, including the Professor B.M. Kheder Award and AP Urdu Academy Fellowship in 2010, the Maulana Azad National Fellowship, the Wenner Grand Foundation and EASA Fellowship, and in the Center's Summer Institute Fellowship for Israel Studies in 2022. The University of Illinois Library Research Award he has won in 2022 from the University of Illinois, Urbana, USA. He was recently awarded with the Young Alumnus of Honor 2023 from the Maulana Azad National Urdu University, a Central University, Hyderabad. So whatever that could be said and praised for Dr. Sajauddin, it is less. So without further delay, I would like to request Dr. Sajauddin to ignite us by his intellectual insights by throwing light on the beautiful topic of today, that is diaspora as an interdisciplinary approach for humanities and social sciences. So Dr. Sajauddin, please throw light on the topic, and I would like you to take over the particular session. It is now yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pandey, for your wonderful introduction. I would first of all like to thank the organizer, first of all, the Vice Chancellor of MIT University, Chhattisgarh, the head of the department, Professor Indrani Madam, and Dr. Mohaiminul Islam and his entire team, Dr. Roy, Dr. Urkun, and all the faculty members in the department for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas with you. And I'm sure that the participant of this particular faculty development programs are familiar with diaspora studies, because we already had one of the sessions in the previous day, I guess, by Professor Lahiri, who talked about future of diaspora studies. Wonderful session. In fact, I wanted to attend it, but couldn't do it due to some my other engagement, but I hope you are familiar with. So why I have chosen this particular topic of today, that is the interdisciplinary diaspora as an interdisciplinary approach for humanities and social sciences. And we had a discussion when we were finalizing this topic with Professor Mohaminul, because Mohaminul is Dr. Mohaminul. He is my junior actually, but we call him Mohaminul. So he's also from diaspora studies, and we were discussing, Shujabai, what should be the topic. Then I said, keep it as a diaspora as an interdisciplinary approach. Then I said, add humanities and social sciences. Interdisciplinarity is not limited to humanities and social sciences. It also limited to other sciences as well, human sciences and other sciences. So we wanted to confine it to humanities and social sciences. Of course, environmental sciences also come in. How it comes in, we will discuss. But then our major concern here in this particular session would be humanities and social sciences. Why this particular topic is needed? Why, for example, let us begin with the FDP title itself, Global Perspective on Literature and World Cinema. He also suggested me that, Shujabai, you speak on cinema and diaspora. I said, I'll speak on this diaspora as an approach, which could be applicable for both literature and, cinema. Not only those two things, but across the disciplines in humanities and social sciences. Diaspora, this is how the idea of diaspora comes in. This is how the idea of interdisciplinary approach comes in. Earlier, when diaspora started, be it in India, so it was, I would not hesitate to say that it was hijacked by some political scientists in political science department, higher departments. It was also hijacked in the literature department. So literature used to say that this is the only diaspora. People from literature, people from, their different respective sociologists who used to say that it's a sociological entity. It's a part of sociology. But then diaspora itself emerged as a different discipline. Not just discipline, but interdisciplinary discipline. So this is how the borders of the discipline blur and merge into another discipline. This is how the border of disciplinarity move from one traditional understanding of a subject to more advanced idea of the subject. So I am aware of the fact that you are familiar with subject. We used to talk about subjects when we were in PG. Then we started talking about discipline. Today, when we are teacher and you are, most of you are also teacher, I think all of you are, since it's a faculty development program, some of you must be research scholars. Tomorrow you are also going to be a faculty member. Then how are you going to deal with the global perspectives, the global conditions, the contemporary conditions that are emerging? What is diaspora? What is interdisciplinarity? How diaspora emerged? And if you talk about diaspora, you can probably talk about any subject. You talk about economics, political science, international relation, sociology, media, film, cinema, literature, culture, identity, almost everything. So in this context, how this particular field of study emerged? Interdisciplinarity is amalgamation of various disciplines. It emerged from one discipline and other various disciplines into another discipline. But when you talk about discipline, so it has its own limitations. And when you talk about interdiscipline, then you have that freedom of you have a freedom, you have a holistic approach to study the complex dynamics of contemporary global human condition. What are these, complexities of contemporary global human conditions that our traditional humanities and social sciences approaches and theories were not adequate to comprehend this contemporary situation of humans? And what this situation, the contemporary situation in the global context, has emerged and still emerging due to growing huge national and international human mobility, due to advancement in information and communication technology, due to rapid globalization. These are the things which have shaped our traditional structure of society and which is leading to new forms of societies, both at national and international level. And those new formulations, new configurations of societies are now being called as all the new familiar terms that you are familiarizing with today. Be it diaspora is one of the part of it. Along with diaspora, then you might also probably have heard of parallel societies, transnational societies, transnational citizenship, global citizenship, and you might also have heard about ghettoization. Although these concepts, you might trace these concepts long back to antiquities, let us say some 2000 years back, but then today we are eagerly waiting and waiting to read, to understand, and to do further research in these areas, because these terms are becoming currency in our academic discussions. So why I have chosen this topic? Because it's very interesting. Diaspora is not limited to one discipline. It is amalgamation of many disciplines. And this approach, diaspora as an approach, it's not just a concept. It's not just a theory. It's not just something which is only related with the Jewish pattern of diaspora. I am editing one of the books with many good established scholars, including Professor Robin Cohen, who is a very well-known figure in diaspora studies. And the first chapter is by him only. We had a talk with him. And the title of that talk, title of that chapter is From Jewish to Indian Diaspora. So the Indian diaspora, he discussed how Indian diaspora is setting another pattern, as the Jewish diaspora set an archetypal pattern for our studies, for other diasporas. So what I'm trying to say, that there is this constant process of becoming the society that have emerged, and they are still emerging. Therefore, we need a diverse approach, and that diverse approach comes through interdisciplinarity. And diaspora itself is an interdisciplinary. Excuse me. You can apply diaspora as an approach after listening to my talk, and I'm sure you must be familiar with this, but still I will try to cover some of the major issues that I have been discussing in various platforms when it comes to diaspora studies as an approach, how we can apply it to various disciplines. So let me begin with uh, what exactly the diaspora is and how it gets formulated in the contemporary time. Uh, and also, if you see the both national and transnational migratory patterns, so there is always this crave for formulating home away from home, despite the fact that there are possibilities of nationalization and there are nationalizing processes, there are internationalizing processes, there is globalization, there are a lot many things are going on, right? But despite this, an individual from, let us say, Maharashtra migrates to Mumbai, migrates to, let us say, Delhi, and a Gujarati migrates to UP, or a Malayali migrates to Bombay. So what happens here? It's part of nation, it's part of nationalization. But then within this process, there is another process goes on. And that process is something from within. So what these individuals do, they try to retain their identity, being Malayali, being Gujarati, being Marathi, be it in terms of food, be it in terms of language, be it in terms of other social identities. So they try to retain those identities at national level, and same thing happens when they cross the international border. When they cross international border, same thing happens. They try to retain their identities, various identities, including their food habits. So culture, identity, language, and literature at home are social homes wherein we often want to reside in. And if we are forced to migrate voluntarily or involuntarily from these homes, we often want to create these homes, especially the social homes, away from the home from where we are forced to migrate voluntarily or involuntarily. The desire for this social home constantly keeps us engaged and inclined towards the homes that are left behind and compel us to create these homes away from homes. This interesting desire caused by crossing different socio-cultural settings, be it national or international, lead to formulation of immigrant minorities, which you may call as a diaspora, which you may call as a parallel societies, or other, whatever you call it. But there is a formulation of certain kind of societies. I have very especially tried to emphasize on the idea of crossing socio-cultural setting. In one of my articles on the psychology of diaspora, which is available on academia, this is what my emphasis on, crossing the socio-cultural border. We all are migrants. Everybody is migrant, I'm sure, including the participants. And we all are migrants at one point or the other point of in our life. So are we diaspora also? That answer you have to give me in our discussion session. But let me quickly again tell you, if any participant has any question, comment, or want me to discuss any specific point, you may please raise your hand. We will respond to that. Yeah. So crossing the socio-cultural setting is important part in the formulation of diaspora, be it national or international. For example, a Malayali migrating from, let us say, Wayanad to Jaipur. His food patterns are different. His language is different. His other cultural practices may be different. The ingredients that they use in their diet are different. Therefore, you find within India, Kerala Samaj, Udiya Samaj, Marathi Samaj, different associations, Telugu associations, so and so associations, and the same pattern you find in USA as well. USA, Canada, and other, Western societies, wherever our Indian migrants go. So what are these societies? These societies are trying to retain their specific identity. And you find this formulation of these societies when the socio-cultural setting of the place of arrival changes. If a person from Mumbai migrates to Pune, he may not have much problem. If a person from Delhi migrates to Noida, may not have much problem. But if a person from Kashmir, Srinagar, migrates to other place, let us say Mumbai, Pune, Ahmedabad, etc., so he may or she may probably have some problem in terms of adjustment in this new socio-cultural setting. So there starts formulation of different identity, be it as a migrant or, I won't say, diaspora. You have to tell me how it is diaspora. Then some scholars argue that crossing international border is necessary when we talk about diaspora. And here I disagree with this scholarship. And I say that it's not necessarily that one has to cross international border to be a diaspora. For example, a person from Oman migrating to Yemen, there are no much socio-cultural differences. The socio-cultural setting of Oman and the socio-cultural setting of Yemen is same. The language is same, food habits is same, religion is same, people are same, race same, everything is same. Then this idea of crossing international border to be called somebody as a diasporic fails here. And most of you must have watched and read the movie called Two States. You might probably find some diasporic sensibilities in that novels, unfully. Oh, you might also ask me a question that what about the idea of homeland? There is no home. I mean, you might also say that there is no idea of homeland, but there is an idea of home. And what is that home? And that home could be anything. Home could be your home, these four walls. Home could be your big house. Home could be your locality. your area, your mohalla, your colony, your society, or your town, district, state, and then your country, then your subcontinent, then this earth. I know, I'm damn sure that tomorrow we are going to talk about migration from earth to other planets. So then earth becomes your home. These are the physical entities of understanding home. Then what are the non-physical entities that formulate the idea of home? And it is true that your language is your home, your food is your home, your culture, your religion, your practices, your tradition, your race, your other social comforts are home. So for Dr. Muhaiminul, home is something that he enjoys in let us say Kolkata. And if he or she migrates to, let us say, Gandhinagar, a mostly vegetarian city, and he is very much fond of non-vegetarian food, then what happens? So for somebody, food would be the home. For somebody, language would be the home. Therefore, this happens, especially in the central institutes. We studied at Central University of Hyderabad. Then we had in Maulana Azad University, we have crowd from various states, students. And suddenly when one person from one state, let us say a Kashmiri guy meets another Kashmiri guy, suddenly he jumps into the Kashmiri conversation, thinking that we all are standing there and make somebody as a linguistic alienation. But then what is it? You don't have to be. You don't have to say that, yeah, these people are very much, linguistic jingoism. No, you can't say this. It's passion, it's expression, it's a feeling, it's home that they have been looking for. They have been, wanted to live in, and they were not able to live in. Therefore, they jump into that home. Similar, the Malayalis, the Bengalis, and other people. So the language becomes as a home here. You feel comfort when you are into, when you find the opportunity to be at home. So we try to create this home, away from that particular socio-cultural setting to the new setting. And this recreation, reimagination, and retaining and preserving and promoting are the basic characteristics of diaspora. So you might probably apply this to your migration within the state or out of state or to other countries. So here, crossing socio-cultural boundary, crossing socio-cultural setting becomes more important than the crossing just national and international setting when it comes to idea of formulation of the state. So, and these probabilities of making homes away from homes are increasing day by day. Indian diaspora, world's largest diaspora. There is no country, I guess, wherein there are no Indians, and Chinese equally. Therefore, if you go to countries like Warsaw, Poland, I was in Poland, in Warsaw. Near the Warsaw University, if you walk for a mile, you find Indian shop, India market. And if you go to Calcutta, there is Chinatown. But for them, it's a in foreign land. But if you come to Gandhinagar and if you go to sector 21, there is Kerala shop. There are Marathi Sansad. There is Udiya Samaj. It's in Gandhinagar. And similar associations, Telugu associations and lot many other associations you will also find in countries like USA and other places. So why this formulation is happening? Because of the growing migration, because of crossing the socio-cultural setting, which is increasing day by day. And if you see the data from World Migration Reports 2022, the estimated number of international migrants has increased over the past 5 decades. The total estimated 281 million people living in a country other than their country of birth in 2020 was just 128 million. So the percentage is increasing day by day. And if you see the national migration, it's more than international migration. Then within this, we try to retain our identities, we try to retain our culture, sometimes more openly, sometimes not openly. Sometimes we are willing to merge into the society of destination. Sometimes we are not able to adjust with those places of absorption. These are the terms that those migrant theorists have used. And we are ready to return to our home. We were not able to create home. There were a lot many issues. There were what's happening with Indian communities in the West. What happened with the Muslims after 9/11? Although they have created home away from homes, but novels and film like The Reluctant Fundamentalists, My Name is Khan, the New York movie, and other movies talk, depict the consequences that these diaspora from India and other places face. So despite your willingness to dissolve into or to assimilate into new society, it is also equally important that how the host society perceives you. It also depends on the host society. You might think that you are part of America. For example, Dr. Let us say Suparna, as a PhD scholar, got a fellowship at New York University and goes to New York. Then what happens? She has all this, enthusiasm, passion, and eager and, zeal to be with American society, and she might like it, big, skyscrapers and so on, so things. And apart from this infrastructure, social structure also, she might sometimes like it, and she might enjoy everything, and she thinks that she's American. But somewhere in the back of her mind, in the back of the society of America, in their psyches, it remained that Dr. Suparna is not American, and Dr. Suparna herself thinks that she is not an American. Why does this idea comes in? Why does the psychology comes in? Please do read that article, Psychology of Diaspora. It's a wonderful, wherein there are certain point of time you feel that you are not American, or the society which you think that is part of you do not accept you wholly. And this is how you started feeling alienated, you started feeling lonely, you started feeling, not part of the society. So these are the things which lead to formulation of diaspora. And there is another interesting understanding of America, along with American dream, there is the Arabian dream also. You have recently, there is a literature coming from Gulf countries as well. I'm sure you must be familiar with the novels like The Good Days by Benjamin and Deepak Unnikrishnan's Temporary People and Nikhil Ramteke's An Arabian Dream, and so on, so thing. And it's interesting. If you are interested, you must read it. This is interesting. This is giving some different dimension of understanding. I'll not go into that depth, but what I mean to say is that the idea of diaspora, there is potential to absorb these contemporary patterns of human migration into its fold because of crossing the socio-cultural setting. And because of growing importance of diaspora across the academics, policy, and political parties, and to nations, the importance of diaspora is increasing. Why? Because one of the important facts, through the lens of political science, or the political importance of diaspora as a soft power. And more importantly, diaspora as an important resource to send the huge remittances to the countries like India and other developing countries, China, and so on. So if you see the remittances that came to India, it's 89 billion US dollar, according to World Bank data. 89 US billion dollar. It's huge. And if you see the role that these remittances play in the countries like Haiti, in their GDP, it's 31%. Somalia, 70% GDP only through the remittances. Then you have Lebanon, 54%, then Tonga, the Tajikistan, and Samoa, so and so places. More than 40% GDP comes only from the remittances. So there are, diaspora is sending huge remittances to these countries. Therefore, the economic importance, the fiscal importance of diaspora is increasing. Then if you talk about literature, if I'm not wrong, after the post-colonial turn, the most migrants who came to the developed world after the independence, after the countries like India got independence, the first generation or second generation, they started writing they started expressing their feeling into cultural productions, be it literature, film, or so and so. So this has given a new dimension, a new understanding, new themes, new subjectivities in literary and cultural studies to know about the contemporary pattern, the emerging patterns of human condition that has depicted in these novels. So if you talk about English literature, diaspora literature hugely added. Let us talk about Indian writing in English. There is a good chunk of writing that has come from diaspora. Most of the contemporary Indian English writers are the one who are in diaspora or talk about diaspora. So in terms of literature, in terms of politics, in terms of culture also, in terms of economy, diaspora is increasing. The importance of diaspora is increasing. And it's opening up the doors for the scholars to study more about this particular phenomena. Excuse me. And apart from this, when it comes to culture, why Indian government is emphasizing on the Indian culture in different countries? Because it's a part of our cultural diplomacy. It's a part of our soft power. It's part of our, we try to create cultural ambassadors. The diaspora also helps in terms of investment, philanthropy. We had surveyed here in a couple of towns in Gujarat. Then we got to know that places like Karamsad, huge remittances come there. The money of municipal corporations sometimes did not get utilized because most of the expenses are covered by the NRIs. So in terms of philanthropy, in terms of investment, in terms of other development initiatives of both at homeland and hostland, the significance of diaspora is increasing. Then there are the other side of diaspora, like apart from this very glossy picture, then you have some gloomy pictures as well. The diaspora face different kind of hardships, be it disrooting from their home, their culture, their relatives, from friends, socio-cultural setting, language. They also feel alienation, discrimination. They also face trauma, memory, belonging, and the challenges of women are different in diaspora. Challenges of children are different in diaspora. Challenges of elderly are different in diaspora, right? So if you guys, if you are interested, you may take up the issues of children. Women aspect is also being covered. Talk about what are the issues of children, what are the issues of elderly people. And there are also contemporary issues like illegal migrants, other security issues, the rise of various nationalisms in diaspora, right? These are the issues that are posing challenges to diaspora communities. And also there are certain challenges which host society think that are posed from diaspora. So I know, I hope I'm audible, right? Dr. Moiminur?
Yes, you're audible. Yes,
Yeah.
you're audible.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. So These are some of the challenges that you can, if you are interested, you can take it up. And there are other challenges like, of course, COVID was one of the part of it, but then COVID not, as it is the ongoing process, COVID did not stop. It only paused the human mobility. Human mobility is an integral part of human being. You cannot stop the human mobility. It's like flowing water. You cannot stop the flowing water. You might stop it, you might pause it for some time, then it overflows. How it overflows? It will cross that border. It will cross that barrier. Similarly, COVID, pause it, and then human mobility resume. Then the other issues like the visa, stringent visa policies that are being implemented by the West, the developed countries. But despite this, we are able to produce the best of the Indians to fit into all those visa categorization, H1B, H1B2, those also. Express visa from Canada. Despite this, despite all these stringent visa policies, Indians are one of the topmost communities to get visas in USA and Canada. So whatever policies and whatever the barriers are being coming, human mobility will continue. And there are various scholars who talk about the definition of diaspora. I will not go into that detail, but what I would do is I will try to highlight some of the core ideas among the in the diaspora studies, especially what are the misconceptions in this. When we talk about diaspora studies, therefore I said I should have listened to Professor Lahiri to take up where he might have left. But then let me clarify another misconceptions in diaspora studies is that crossing national border, international border, we talked about, and then to have a catastrophic, tragic, or forced origin. Some scholar might argue that if you want to call a community as a diaspora community, then it, according to them, ought to be or ought to have catastrophic or tragic or forced origin. But I would again disown and refute this thesis or hypothesis by saying that Indian migration that has taken after the independence to the developed world was not force, except one thing, that partition. That was a tragic, that was catastrophic, that was force. But after that, after 1947, many people voluntarily migrate to various parts of the world, and they become the part of diaspora. Either they settled there or they went there as a temporary migrants. Even why to talk about this? Let us talk about Indian migration to the Gulf. It is also part of diaspora. They were the temporary migrants, like Unikrishnan said in his book, Temporary People. But then they are part of diaspora. If you see the definition of Government of India, MEA, for quite long time, NRIs were not part of diaspora. But if you see the list today, NRI also are part of Indian diaspora. So, and most of the NRIs are not having the origin from the, any kind of tragic incidents or force or catastrophic incidents. They are mostly migrating voluntarily. But then you might also, disagree with me, or you might also try to re-emphasize on the philosophy of what is force and what is not force. There is nothing called voluntary. Yeah? If you go into that philosophy, so there is always force involved in. If somebody gets handsome salary or good living standard and other facilities and all those things within India or within his or her respective place of origin, then he or me or he or she not probably think of migrating to other places. Except then comes the tourist migration. So tourist diaspora, you want to call it? Yeah, there is another debate. We'll not go into that. But what I mean to say, the scholars who argue this, their logic can be refuted here by citing this reason. And also another misconceptions that we have in diaspora studies is that refugees are not diasporas. You might have heard of it, and I heard from a very well-known scholar, and then and it was that scholar who was arguing that most of the classical diasporas were refugees. But then we need to have this clarity. Therefore, I wanted to emphasize, and I have been trying to, develop these ideas and trying to convince the scholars who are having or showing interest in diaspora studies to be clear with the basic conceptions. Yes, refugees are the people who are supposed to go back to their home when the conditions are appropriate. Have you ever heard of the definition of Cohen and William Safran? There also they talk about the diaspora is to return to their homeland, but they cannot return. And why they cannot return? Everybody knows the reason. So how can we disown that refugees are not diaspora? Yeah, that may be a very temporal position sometimes. But then they are gradually about to dissolve into the countries of their destination. Therefore, many countries today are not ready to accept the refugees, including the Western countries and even including India. So, and there are not many other political implications are also involved. We will have different discussions that might take another 1 or 2 hours if we go into that debate. So what I mean to say is that whatever the misconceptions are there, be it crossing of national or an international border, be it having a catastrophic origin, or saying that refugees are not diaspora. So these are not the only suppositions to be called as a diaspora. Therefore, the holistic and the flexible definition of diaspora is important. Now, theorization of this new global condition of human being, unhuman mobility, has been taken place by thinkers like Robin Cohen, William Safran, Appadurai, Said, Bhabha, Spivak, Hall, Gilroy, Clifford, and so on so people. And when they are saying this, it was of course Robin Cohen, but I like one of his definition wherein he is not only associating diaspora definitions to the Jewish pattern. Jewish pattern of diaspora, of course, set an archetypal pattern for us to understand the various other patterns of diaspora. But that is not only the definition. Yeah, it could be the starting point. But what about the Indian diaspora today, which is very vast, having a diverse understanding, having a diverse origins? But at the same time, there is also diaspora which exists like Palestinian diaspora today, having catastrophic understanding. What about Tibetan diaspora? So there are both voluntary and involuntary diasporas. So we cannot fix one thing, one definition, one understanding when we discuss about diaspora. So it's multi-layered. It is also contextual. And migration and diaspora has a close links. You cannot take away migration when you talk about diaspora. My essay begins like and in that essay I argued that migration has a close link with diaspora, and migration is integral part of diaspora. There could be migration without diaspora, but there cannot be diaspora without migration. Therefore diaspora is a post-migration phenomenon. But this argument, you might probably ask me, what about people who are already in diaspora? Let us say Dr. Amresh is in USA and his children born in diaspora. They are not migrant. How come the migration comes here then? But they are the children having the history of migration, having the culture of those migrants. It is different fact that they own that culture or they disown that culture. This happens in diaspora. Therefore, the encounters, challenges, crises, identity issues, everything comes in diaspora studies. So it's very interesting. So diaspora is very interesting. So you can have diverse understanding, starting from its etymological origin to finding its Hebrew pattern, Islamic pattern. Yes, I argued in one of my discussion that Hijrat is a part of diaspora. And some people said, what man you are talking about? What are you talking? Then I said, there is Galut, a Hebrew term. I am also trying to think about, can this Banwas of Rama be a diaspora? I have to explore that dimension because of my search and other, but why can't you apply? Therefore, this diaspora as an approach, you have to apply, you have to, test that hypothesis and you prove it or you disprove it, but try to apply this approach to whichever area of your domain, whichever area of your interest is. So if you see the definition of diaspora, it varies, but it has a more or less same definitions that these people have given. I will not read those definitions, but I would probably want to read one of the definitions of Robin Cohen, wherein he said, diaspora signified a collective trauma, a banishment where one dream of home but live in exile. Other people abroad who have also maintained strong collective identities have in recent years defined themselves as a diaspora, though they were neither active agent of colonization nor passive victims of persecution. This is very important definition of Robin Cohen. Therefore, I have been trying to, work with him, and we are trying to work on these misconceptions and facilitate these scholars who are trying to work or trying to express their interest in this field. You can tell me how much time I have. I still have half an hour, isn't it?
Yes, sir, we have time.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
have time.
Yeah, thank you. So should I continue for 15 minutes and 15 minutes for discussion? How are you planning, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can continue for the next 15 minutes and we will have an interesting
Wonderful.
question
Yeah,
answers.
I would love to have more questions and comment from participants. Let us see
You
what
can
they can
continue.
answer.
You can
Sure, sir.
continue
Sure,
till
sir.
12 o'clock, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we will continue for next 15 minutes and then we'll have. So
Sure.
diaspora as a phenomena, as a condition, as a state of living, being and becoming. It's interesting. And diaspora as a sensibility. Then you talk about diaspora as a psychology, diaspora as a memory, that those dualities and all those things you can talk about. It's a, of course, concept, and today I'm talking about talking it as an approach which can be applicable to any dispersed or migrant community. You either prove it, disprove it, not an issue. But then, of course, those issues in diaspora of identity issue, assimilation, acculturation issues, and issue with host culture and society, how those society and the contemporary issues like nationalism and all that. So when you take up, I assume that most of you from literature background. So when you start working on diaspora, so please have this understanding, be clear with the concepts, and read all the classical and contemporary pattern of diaspora. And you can also talk about issues in how they are depicted in film, literature, and other representations. There are also folk songs, especially the Bhojpuri songs, the Viraha songs, right? Also the Natak of Marathi people in Israel. There are not many things. Therefore, diaspora is becoming very interesting. Diaspora is becoming, it has a huge potential. Why it is attracting the people? Because of its multifarious nature. You can study diaspora anywhere. You can study any aspect of, be it religion, race, language, ethnicity, culture, nationality, and the other issues, contemporary, or somebody might talk about the colonial issues, how the colonial mobility work. There are a lot many things. But when you do this, please don't try to do injustice to this field. In a sense, don't try to apply a single approach, single, traditional framework. For example, you are from literature, so you are analyzing it through as you do critical analysis of poetry or novel, isn't it? Then how do you study diaspora? How do you study diaspora literature? And you might probably do it sometimes. I am not saying that most of you might do same, but no. But what I'm just trying to make you aware and make you familiar with that diaspora as an approach and as an interdisciplinary approach to your study. What you could do is that try to follow the mixed method. This would give you both social sciences and humanities approaches, especially when it comes to data, talk about data. We never talk about how many numbers, how many people are where, what. For example, somebody is talking about, Indian diasporic writing from USA, Indo-American diasporic writing. Then nobody talks about how many Indians are there in America. Some of you might talk about it. I must congratulate you for this. But then nobody talks about it. Then have some social science theories, social science text. For example, I was working on post 9/11 novels in America, Indian post 9/11 novels, and then there were incidences of whatever that we could discuss, be it racial or Islamophobic or other issues that have come up in the post 9/11 scenario. But then I was also, trying to get in touch with Professor Lori Peak at University of Colorado. She has done a wonderful work, the backlash after 9/11, through the sociological, most of the sociological study, the empirical study surveys that she did, interviews she took, and she wrote that book. And that book, I have borrowed most of the incidences in that book that she has documented, and found some similarities with what, let us say, Mohsin Hamid had said, what Bricklane, Monica Ali had said, and so on and so forth. So try to have this, diverse interpretation, try to follow the different approaches from the social sciences, from population science, and many other disciplines. This is how you would be able to bring a comprehensive, holistic, and interdisciplinary approach to your study. I know there are certain methodological challenges, certain traditional challenges. Sometimes your department may not encourage you to go with the sociological data. Sometimes Department of English may not encourage you to go with conducting certain interviews, right? But I would strongly encourage you. What is NEP? NEP also talks about interdisciplinarity. It talks about holistic, study. So NEP came recently, but this particular interdisciplinarity is a very ingrained concept, emerged mostly in 1960s, where there was new theoretical approaches were coming in our literary studies. We had a traditional criticism till Eliot. Then after that, we have formalism, Russian formalism, then coming up all the theories till post-humanism. Interdisciplinary started emerging there itself in 1960s. 1960s, the American students revolting against the traditional setup of discipline. They wanted freedom, discipline's freedom. And this was the time when the interdisciplinarity came in. This was the time which has given some liberty to both students and scholars to think beyond the disciplinary boundaries. So please try to have, I have here some comments for me. No, just a minute. Okay, just let me wind up, please. I got some messages here in the chat box. So what I mean to say, you may have some traditional departments which may not encourage this kind of mixed method, interdisciplinary method, but by the growing this NEP flavor, I think you will be encouraged to apply this interdisciplinary framework. And when you do this, you should have, approaches from both humanities and social sciences. But then going beyond this, you don't have to be, within the traditional approaches of these disciplines. Have a rational mixed method, have some sample, have some, data, have some interviews. So with this few things, I think I should stop here, and I should welcome whatever question, comments, and suggestions you have from the participants. Thank you so much for everybody for bearing with me. Yeah. There are two chat box, Dr. Islam, and
Yes,
one.
sir, it was a very enlightening lecture on diaspora, which will pave way for future, Dr. Nijamuddin. And we are, your lecture actually led us question ourselves that whether we all are diasporic, although we are not in a way. So it was really wonderful how you have actually uh, told how diasporic roots of diaspora actually started in Jewish culture, and how it can be interdisciplinarily applied to every other field also, and how diaspora itself had roots to the home, how identity and the looking backwards for nostalgia, how these are the concepts and that can be applied to every other discipline and discourse as well. And I believe this will definitely, sir, pave way for future research. And you have ignited us by your wonderful lecture on this particular topic. So there are few interesting questions, sir, which we would like to pick up for you, and we will be addressing that. So the first question is from, yes, Shahid Imtiaz. So Shahid Imtiaz's question is, sir, he's asking, please shed some light on Muslim diaspora and the text which represent it. So please, sir.
Okay. There is huge literature produced by Muslim diaspora, of course, from India and also from Arab world. So when you talk about Muslim diaspora, there is one of my articles which is also available on Academia, Hijrat as a Philosophy of Migration, wherein I try to talk about some aspect of how this hijrat could be read as a diaspora. That could be the beginning point, but it goes beyond the, if you are trying to talk about Muslim diaspora, then you also need to talk about the religious dimension of migration. What are the verses that talked about the migration? What are the verses that led to the secondary arguments of jurisprudence about the migration and diaspora, Muslim diaspora? Excuse me. But what is important here about Muslim diaspora is Muslim is a very diverse entity. You cannot put it into one national identity, because you have Indian Muslim, Pakistani Muslim, Bangladeshi Muslims, and Arab Muslims, and many American Muslims, and so many things. So when you talk about Muslim diaspora, we have to be very specific when we talk about it. And yes, of course, we have many Indian Muslim diasporic writers. We have Roshdi, we have Samina Ali, and many other writers. If you talk about international level, of of course, Rushdie is also international writer, but uh, from Arab region, you have um, Moja Kaf, you have uh, uh, most of the Pakistani writers who are in diaspora, like be it H.M. Naqvi, Hamid, or Bangladeshi, Monica Ali, Shai, and Abdullah, and lot many. There is huge list, but what and there are many texts. Be it Abdul Razak Gurna and Sayyid Tali's The Season of Migration. These are the writers that I mentioned here. You may probably, look at their writing, be it Mohsin Hamid's Reluctant Fundamentalists or The Home by H.M. Naqvi or the Bricklands and other works of Monica Ali. You can refer to any work which talks about the issues of Muslims in the countries where their socio-cultural setting changes. But also, there is another novel by Ajay Singh, I guess, the interesting novel which talks about the issues of Muslims, not written by Muslim, but by non-Muslim. So when you talk about Muslim diaspora, not necessarily it should be written by Muslims, but there are many non-Muslim writers who have written about the issues of Muslims in diaspora. Yeah. Can we go with the next question? I hope I was able to respond to that question. Who was that? Syed?
Yes,
Syed? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, Syed's question was rightly addressed, I hope, sir. And there is another interesting question that from Manisha, and she wants to know, she is interested to know the psychology of diaspora concerning the construction of home away from home. So she wants to know that the psychological aspect that prompts the reconstruction as a majority of youth escape, and how their home opting for better option living standards of Western countries, yet they yearn for anything regional. So he wants to know the psychological aspect which prompts the reconstruction as the majority of youth escape.
Okay, if I'm not wrong, she wants to know what are the psychological dimensions of reconstructing home in diaspora.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Our question exactly reads like this.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's interesting because although therefore, I was trying to underline 2 lines from refugee and 1 from diaspora. One of the basic tenets of those things, those groups wants to return to home, but they cannot return. A diaspora, a refugee wants to return home, but he or she cannot return home. Reason being, there are many issues at home, be it political, be it economical, be it security or whatsoever reason. And they want to rebuild that home. They want to support that home. They want to reconstruct this home. Apart from the physical entities in the constructing home, there are psychological features also. What is home? What is India for the 3rd generation diaspora? They have never seen it. So it's a part of their imagination. It's a part of their something that they imagine, something that they carry from their parents to them. It's never been that they can't come India and see. And there are certain shocks that they get when they come to India. And they said, oh, this is not the India that we heard, that we discussed, that we heard from our parent. And you might be surprised to know that the Durga Puja, the Ratha Yatra, the Hanuman Chalisa, or the Muharram, that the way it is performed in Mauritius is absolutely different from India. So there are these psychological, ups and downs, and psychology remains very important, and somewhere it remains in your back. Although you think, as I was trying to give an example, that you might probably think that you are part of so and so country, but you are not sometimes. You are forced not to think that you are not, by whatever reason. Everything is going very well. Suddenly 9/11 happened and everybody became suspect. Before 9/11, everybody was like American, having American dream, what those transcendentalists have said, enjoying that equal privilege, but at the same time not enjoying the equal privileges. Like what that famous George Orwell's novel, says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more. All migrants were same in America. America is a nation of immigrants. Of course, there were Indians, red Indians, but it is a nation of immigrant. Huge migration that has taken place because of what Protestantism was happening there was some issue in the British and the European understanding of Christianity. Then people were forced to leave and go to Newfoundland, the new heaven. If you go to Boston, there is cemetery. I was there in the Boston, the first shore when you travel from this part. So all were Indians. Look at the essay of John F. Kennedy, "Oh Nation of Immigrant." It turned into a book also. I think it's a wonderful essay if you are interested. It won't take an hour if you want to read it. So how come some immigrants become the owner of America and some immigrants remain as immigrant? Why did the hyphenated identity came only with the Indians, Indo-American? Why not with the Swiss American, German American? Have you ever heard of this? No. So the treatment that you receive, the behavioral pattern of hostland also shape your psychology, your way of understanding, perceiving things. So psychology plays an important role in shaping the diaspora, your diasporic experience also. You think that you are part of it, and at the same time you think, or you are forced to think, that you are not part of it. I hope I was able to make some sense. Whose question it was? It was a wonderful question.
Yes,
But
sir. It was a question from Manisha.
Manisha, are you there? You can respond. Is it clear, or you want me to be more clear? You want me to highlight any specific thing that I might have missed?
Sir, actually, Manisha may not be able to use her audio.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's all right. I hope I was
it
able
can
to
be,
respond.
sorry to interrupt, it can be in place if the participant is
Okay.
eager to directly talk to the guest speaker.
course.
Please raise your hand so that the
Raise.
IT team can just.
Yeah. And any other question, please? Meanwhile, should we respond to?
Yes, sir. There is another question from Anvesha Roy Chaudhary, sir. So her question is, what effect do diaspora have on women? Do you
So
think,
can you repeat?
her question is, sir, what effect do diaspora have on women? Do you think gendered violence perpetuated in an after effect of diasporic activities?
Okay. Gender violence has been increased or decreased? She wants to know.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. This is wonderful question. But remember, it's one part of women in diaspora. Women in diaspora equally contributed to diaspora itself. So there are, whatever the issues of men have, women do have, and there are more issues that women face in diaspora. But at the same time, it was not only just the kind of problematic situation that they had, but it was also a liberating situation for them when they took migration or they go into diaspora. You might have heard one of the novels of Chitra Divakuruni, Desirable Daughters, some of the novels wherein there was an issue that the women girl who gets married to somebody in Bengal, her mother-in-law forced her to go with abortion because she conceived a girl child. And the girl said, I will not go with the abortion. And to skip this pressure, she moves to America. This is one contemporary example, but going back to the issues that there are diverse issues. What I mean to say, there were diverse issues. When it comes to gender violence, as compared to diaspora and let us say in Indian society, there is gender violence and there is no gender violence. So we cannot be quite generalized when we talk about this. So we have to look at the situation and the context. For example, it was a time, it was indentured labor time, wherein there was a less number of female compared to male, and it was a systematic gender violence that was taking place in indentureship in its early time. But then colonial British administration revised its policies, increased the number. So that was, one thing. But domestic, that was in general. Coming back to domestic violence. So that also we need to look at it in what society, what level of those societies are, be it professional, be it educational, be it how those societies are educationally sound. For example, in one of the movies like Kurban, there you see the gender violence that is taking place in America. But then you need to have the social science data. Look at the reports that are produced. They will help you to come to the accuracy of these issues. So you cannot say that there is a gender violence after watching the Kurban in the entire diaspora community in America. So you have to be very careful while coming up with this kind of suppositions.
Sir, I'll take the next question, sir, for you.
Please.
And it says, it is from Ms. Disha Mandal, and she asks, like, after the partition of 1947, many Christian families left for the USA. So she is wanting to know about the diasporic identity, their diasporic identity in the new land.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. This is an interesting question. How Christians see themselves when they migrate to countries like America. And when they migrate to country like Bangladesh, when they migrate to country like Pakistan, these are the probable destinations, and Canada for that matter, for the 1947 refugees. In one of the novels, in The Reluctant Fundamentalist, there is somebody called Ron. He is a Christian Pakistani who also goes to America along with Changez. he did not face much problem. Reason being, his identity was not that open as Changes. So his experiences were different. Similarly, when you talk about the Christian families from India migrating to places called America, they were more easily, more voluntarily assimilated into that society. But yes, there may be probabilities of these people facing the racial discrimination. But on the cultural level, on the policy level, they were already, most of them become and absorbed into that, respective cultural identity. Yeah. Some of them, for example, today, if you talk about today's Christians, let us say Indian Christians migrating to other part of world, their Indianness remains with them. And it's also a matter of how many of them want to retain their Indianness. For example, I had quite a lot interactions with some of the Mauritians. There is one of my friends, Shama Ramsey. So I said Shama. Then she said, no, please modify your pronunciation. I am not Shama. And there was Satyanarayana. And I said, how are you, Satyanarayana? He said, no, I am not Satyanarayana. I am Satnarayan. So they have, so how do they want to identify themselves as? Not just with the names, but the other cultural practices, other, food practices, other, some local typical things. For example, take another example of Jews migrating to Israel, mostly from Mumbai, the Marathi Jews. They went there as a part of Aliyah. When the Ben Gurion called for this return of Jews to Israel, they also went, but they voluntarily wanted to absorb into that Jewish society, but Jewish society did not accept them. So how far these Christians are being absorbed and adopted or received by the Christianity, the white Christianity, the white Jewish Jews. So the Kharedi Jews, the Arab Jews, the Indian Jews, the Beta Jews from the Africa, although they wanted to mingle with the Judaism and the, let us say another example of Christianity, but how far these Judaism and the Christianity, the white dominance, accept them, these people who are different, not just culturally, but also racially. So there are the probabilities of, facing this question, these issues, as in the case of Indian Jews in Israel and the other Jews like the Beta Jews, the African Jews, and the Arab Jews. Yeah. I hope I was trying to make some sense to you, Mandal.
Yes, sir. Her query was rightly addressed. We have another question from Dr. Shubha Tiwari. And her question actually encompasses two of the queries. So her first query is, if anyone changes religion, can that also be categorized as diaspora? First. And her second query is, if a son or if a child is being born out of that marriage, which religion does that child belong to?
Child born out of what?
If a child is born, sir, out of the marriage, two people are being married and
different religions.
Different religions. So
yeah.
Which category, which religion does the child will go to?
Oh, this is very contemporary question. And if you want to put into diasporic framework, I would say that diaspora is something beyond this kind of individualities. It's a matter of, mother and father, how they want their son to follow which religious practice, and moreover, what the son wants to follow if he or she attains maturity. So it's all part of individual, choices. And coming back to the previous question, if someone converts from one religion to another religion, can we call it as diaspora? Am I correct? But then I think conversion is not into the diasporic framework. Diaspora is something beyond conversion. You can call it as a migration from one religion to another religion. But when you are doing this, yes, you may be right. This question may be very appropriate, very advanced question. If you are asking me in a sense that there are certain news that are going around that some Pakistani women, they moved to India via Nepal and married to one of the, let us say, non-Muslim person. This is in a very viral news. And she married to a non-Muslim. But then, is it a diaspora? In this sense, if you are asking me in this sense, so if she miss her home, if she miss her cultural practices, then there is this possibility of reading it through the lens of diaspora. But if she shun away from all those things and want to absolutely eradicate herself from, the whatever she had in the past, she want to erase the memory that she had. It all matter of this. But is definition of diaspora confined to individuality? For example, as I said, some Indians, the third generation Indians in America, may not want themselves to be associated. Let us say Rishi Sunak. Before he came into prominence, he might not have thought that he is quite very much in love with India because his ancestors were from India. But then, does his understanding alone defines that who is he? Society also decides who is he. We decide that we still claim, even Kamala Harris, we say it's a part of India, although Harris sometimes might not have say that I'm Indian or Indian origin, but we say it's a part of Indian diaspora. So these all factors define. Society also defines your identity. So society also play a very important role. You say, I am very much individualist. I have my own individual understanding. Okay, but there is social understanding of you as well. How society respond to you and your identities. I hope I was trying to make some sense. Yeah.
So the next question is from Mr. Shrikant. And he asks, like, kindly enlighten on Bhojpuri diaspora with special context to Mauritius. How are they different from the Indian Bhojpuris?
Oh, yes. Recently, we published a book, The Girmitya, Literature of Girmitya from Springer. And the entire book talks about this. And as I said, the Bhojpuris, especially the Girmitya from this Bhojpuri belt of India, they migrated during the indenture time. Their cultural practices are as same as what they have left in India, what they carried with them, which today in India might have changed. Therefore, I said those Bhojpuris are more Bhojpuri than today's Bhojpuri. Those Hindus are more Hindus than today's Hindus in India. So these probabilities are there. You can even I would suggest you just read that introduction of that book. Yeah. And I have given example also from the Mauritius, be it Muslim Bhojpuri, be it Hindu Bhojpuri, be it celebrating, this Rath, different Hindu celebrations, including Diwali and Muslim celebrations and, Muharram and all that. Muharram in India, the way we used to celebrate when we were kid, I think I was maybe around 8 to 9 years when we used to see the tajiyas of Muharram in our house. But today there is no Muharram in this form, but there are other patterns of. So we have left lot many things, but those people still really retain those things with them. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Very wonderfully located the question, and you have addressed the question very wonderfully, sir. So there is another interesting question from Suchismita, and her question reads like, India is becoming a global economic power nowadays. In this perspective, how is India attracting people from other countries and other nations due to economic pull factor? And what would be its scope in future for the diaspora and the diaspora studies for Indian scholars? So that is our questions.
What is the how far India is attracting the international
Yes, sir.
people? Okay.
What would be the future scope for it?
Yeah, I can respond to this. What could be the future rather than the present? Present is, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, present is not that attractive. Although we are becoming a wonderful, we are doing very good in terms of economy, in terms of internationalizing ourselves, globalizing ourselves. But there are no such attractive policies that could attract even Indian diaspora. We are not, doing it. We need to reform some of our policies, and I'm sure this government is very keen into attracting international actors, and they should come up, and they would probably come up with the new attracting policies, including the diaspora. You must be surprised to see that one of the reports that published in one of the prominent Indian newspapers, and also the debate in Indian Parliament, that why many Indians are leaving, citizenship of India. So these are some of the challenges that India have, despite that we are, moving ahead towards the globalizing and our economy and becoming one of the most powerful nation in the contemporary global platform. But then these are some of the challenges which we need to look into, which we need to revise our policy to attract attract, and not only just to attract, but to fulfill the coming demand. This is a demand of time to attract not only the international actors, but also our Indian diaspora. India, we as a government of India, we as a nation have been trying to attract Indian diaspora through running the programs like Pravasi Bharati Divas. And I just recently shared one Facebook link that Indian government is keen to sponsor some of the scholarships to Indian diaspora. So we are doing our best at our whatever possible level, but we need more engaging, more energetic policies to, take this, possible fruitful collaborations and attraction further. Yeah. Any other question? I hope I was able to respond to that.
Yes, sir.
This question.
Yes, sir. We have a question from one of our faculty members, Mr. Vicky Prasad, and I would request IT team to kindly enable his audio.
Yeah.
If IT team can hear. IT team, can you please enable Vicky sir's audio? Okay. He is not one of the panelists, so his audio is to be enabled. Vicky sir, can you hear me?
He's mute, I guess.
Am I
Mr. Vicky
audible, sir?
Prasad? Yes.
Yeah, you are. Please, you can turn on your camera also.
Yeah. Sir, I can only on my mute. I can only
Oh, no
unmute myself,
problem.
sir.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Sir, actually, first of all, thank you very much for this wonderful, discursive understanding of the recursive themes and manifestations of diaspora. So, actually, my question is that how diaspora is manipulating the linguistic style of the authors, those who are
Sorry,
migrating.
can you repeat again? How
Yeah,
manipulate?
how diaspora is manipulating diaspora as a interdisciplinary course. Okay, how it is that manipulating the linguistic style of the authors who are migrating from the native land to a foreign land, and after acculturation, okay, and contact zone of Mariprat, how it is defining the linguistic style of the authors. So would you like to throw pattern of the diaspora as a linguistic approach?
If I'm not wrong, if I understood in this way, you are trying to ask me that how diaspora manipulate the linguistic identity of the people or
I'm
writer.
talking about I'm talking about the craftsmanship, sir. How the
Sorry.
linguistic style of writing, craftsmanship.
Okay. Okay. How the linguistic writing is being shaped because of diaspora?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I given the answer shaped. When you
Yeah.
say manipulated, I said shaped. Okay,
Yes,
you
sir.
can
Thank you very much, sir.
say, yeah. But yes, diaspora is, of course, providing lot many things, including the shaping the narratives of the writers, also the stylistic craft of these writers. One obvious fact that it has given them a new story to write, new landscape to observe. One, and stylistically, there are many courses that they do attend in respect to their destinations. I think most of the writers, not most, but majority, handsome chunk of writers have gone through the creative writing courses in the diaspora, be it Chitra Divakuruni from India, be it one of the Pakistani writer, I just forget his name, I read his novel, Beautiful from this angle, Mahakhan Philip, and similar writers have, gone through the creative writing courses. I know these courses are also available in India, but not the way they are prospering. They are facilitating the people in the West, particularly in America. So apart from this new story, apart from the new landscape, apart from new culture, new setting, the narratives, the stylistics of these people also change. And yeah, there are these probabilities, one of which is this, I personally feel that it's courses that they do. Yeah. Was it okay?
Yes,
Vicky
sir.
sir?
Yes, sir. It was okay. So actually, isn't it challenging for those authors that keeping in the foreign language and foreign stylistics, they are keeping Indianness that we talk about, quote unquote Indianness, sir, when they're writing the diasporic writings.
Uh, you can say this, but it's not just challenge. Yeah, if you look at the diasporic writing of the MENA region writers in the Europe, they first write in Arabic, and they started writing in the respective languages like Italian, German, and the Swiss, and so languages. And if you ask them why they started writing, and then I think one of our Indian writer, who was that started writing in Italian language? I just
Yes,
forget.
Jhumpal Lahiri. Right.
Lahiri started writing in this language. But reason being, I'm not quoting Lahiri here, but I'm quoting the writers from Northeast, this MENA region, Middle East and North Africa. And if you see why they started writing in this in these respective languages of Italian and so and so, that they wanted to tell their experiences and their feelings and their expressions in their own language to reach to the people among whom they live, to convince them in their own language, because Arabic sometimes become difficult for them. But then there is a huge translation of those Arabic novels. So yes, language could be barrier for them to express their, they took it up. They have adapted that language and they started writing in those languages. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. You have rightly explained. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I would now request Dr. Shubhankar Rai to come up with this
Yes.
question.
Yeah, please. Not just questions, if you have comment, suggestions, yeah, that's most welcome. Yeah. From participant.
Thank you, sir, for your inimitable negotiations with the recurring manifestations that has bogged the humanity down since time immemorial. Actually, sir, my question is very simple. Since the process of immigration is perpetual and it is a continuous process, so how the process of immigration continues to affect the formation of nation and nationalities, considering the recent flare-up in France, while the nationalist leaders are cracking on the system of immigration and enacting newer laws, and some nationalist leaders in the West are tottering on the brink because their identities are going to be diminished by the overwhelming presence of the immigration. So, what about your take on this issue?
This is very important question. Thank you, Dr. Roy, for asking this. First of all, whatever happened and happening is absolutely condemnable. Be it shooting of the guy who has a different racial identity, and whatever happened after that, it's condemnable. It's not at all. But then there comes in the anger that these migrants have, the anger of the nationalists have for each other. It became a triggering point for both of them, and both of them started, and the debate in the Europe against the immigrants, particularly the Muslim immigrants, is obvious. And there is always this nationalist, ultra-nationalist who stood against the migrants and the refugees in the West. This because Europe has always been perceived itself as the only nation exists on this planet, including its racial configuration, including its religious configuration, and the only homogeneous entity. Although there have been very beautiful theories and theories have come up from the West, especially Europe, we are talking about Europe here, be it freedom of expression, freedom of whatever you talk about. There are very idealist theories, but when it comes to practical, it's a different. Therefore, I would talk about one of the theorists. It's Habermas, I guess. He talks about in the context of European space, European sphere, and space. And he said, what is individual is not individual, and what is public in Europe is not public, it's individual. What is public sphere in Europe is part of extended understanding of an individual. And what is that individual is a collective individual that is homogeneous, understanding of the West.
Thank you, sir.
So I hope I was trying to respond to your question. The
Yes,
very
sir. Much.
core understanding of the this contemporary issue in the West. And to your understanding, let me quickly give another example. Then it was in 2019 when there was a huge crisis. The refugee crisis started in the Europe. I am not saying that Europe is because refugees are refugees. They are helpless. There is no he refugee, she refugee, black refugee, white refugee, right? But there was this black refugee, white refugee. There was this cultural and this identities of refugees which revealed when this crisis took place in the MENA. Suddenly the flux of refugees started moving to the Southern Europe. Southern Europe, why to the Southern Europe? Because it has a geographical proximity. They cannot go directly to the Northern Europe or to Russia. It's certain geographical factors we also have to understand. Like suddenly when the war broke in Ukraine, people started moving to Poland. Although Poland was most radical, the most ultra nationalist people are there in Poland. There was a march for against refugees and against Muslims in Warsaw. Thankfully, I was back by that time. But how many immigrants and refugees and Muslims are there in the Poland? 0.01%. As compared to, let us say, Italy, 8%. France, almost 8%, around 8%. But then Poland and countries like Poland led this, whole procession against the refugees and migrants and Muslims. But then when this war broke in Ukraine, it was the same Warsaw which provided the old clothes, the used clothes, the foods and everything on the street of Warsaw for Ukrainian refugees. So this dualistic approach, because they are the whites, they are the white refugees, and these MENA refugees were not the white refugees, they were colored refugees. And apart from the color, they were not part of the white imagination of Europe. They were not part of the white culture of Europe. So with this, I should stop here. I hope I was able to respond to it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, one last and humble question from me.
Of course, please.
Yeah, I needed to know, like, the representation of diaspora in Indian cinema is usually a very glamorized version. So where do you see the realistic representation of the diasporic community, Indian diasporic community in Indian cinema?
Wonderful. Are you from film studies?
One of my areas, sir.
You have interest in this, yeah.
Yes.
See, films are generally product in the market, right? So you cannot sell whatever you have. You have to sell what your market demands, right? So yes, there are certain movies like movies directed by Meera Nair, movies directed by some other very well-known directors, art directors, you may call it. But most of the time, movies are made. Even the adaptation of the Reluctant Fundamentalists or other novels like Namesake, वगैरह. I think Namesake also directed by Meera Nair. If I'm not wrong, anyone can update me. So these movies are made by looking at the market value. And there are very few directors who try to stick to some realities as well. But most of the time, they are made. That is one of the reasons why you find that Bollywood, and I think we must thank to Bollywood, which has actually started giving the diasporic pictures of Indians long back before the literature, take up. But if you talk about this, and I would say that it was, this Bihari man, Sheikh Mohammed, who wrote first text in English in the subcontinent, started talking about the experience and interactions of Indians with the Britons. But then it was a movie only, it was Bollywood only, who started giving early pictures of, diaspora. And then along with that, it's a very mirchi masala kind of, picture, not just picture. So whatever the taste that Indian audience and the film goers are, and they started, coming up with this kind of ideology. But there are very few, as I said, Meera Nair's, directed films are still having, having or touching upon the realities of Indian diaspora or other diaspora community for that matter. Is that okay? You want me
Yes,
to say
sure,
something
surely, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I think we don't have any more question.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, sir, so much, and hope that we will have more interactive session on this particular topic, and especially the mental health of those people. So after partition, maybe they're in India in their old age still thinking about Bangladesh or maybe Pakistan, from Bangladesh to India, whatever. So hope to have more interactive session in future. Thank you so much.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, yes. Yes,
I
you
think
can.
my internet is exhausted. I think I'm having some internet issue. I hope there was
Yes.
no question further.
No,
Yeah, if any queries comes, we'll send you to your mail, sir.
yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks. You already left.
I think he's having internet connectivity issue. Pratyush, please continue.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. So I think we should go to our next speaker. Thanking sir. So our next speaker is, before starting, I will be starting with his introduction. Professor Manojit Mandal is our next speaker. And Professor Manojit Mandal is a professor and chair of English in Jadavpur University, Kolkata. And Professor Manojit Mandal had started his academic career as a lecturer in English in Assam University, Silchar in 2000, where he worked for about a year before joining Ravindra Bharati University in the same post and worked there till March 2005. Since then, Professor Mandal has been associated with the Department of English, Jadavpur University, and has been designated as professor since October 2018. Professor Manda completed his doctoral dissertation from the Faculty of Arts, Jadavpur University, on reinterpreting Tagore, society, culture, and decolonization. And he has published over 15 articles in various national and international books and journals in the fields of Shakespeare and post-colonial theory, Shakespeare in Bengal, Tagore, disability studies. At the moment, he is contracted with Routledge Publication and Taylor and Francis Publication. And Professor Mandal was a member of the Executive Council of Jadavpur University, nominated by the WB Higher Education Council from 2017 to 2019. He was also a member of Planning and Development Committee of the university from 2017 to 2021. He was nominated by the Jadavpur University to the governing body Institute of Business Management, NCE Bengal, Jadavpur from 2014 to 2021. Dr. Mandal also serves in several academic and administrative bodies, both within and outside university. In addition to the above, Professor Mandal has been actively engaged with Center for Studies in Cultural Diversity in Well-being. Formerly, it was a Center for Disability Studies, Jadavpur University since 2012, and has been discharging his duties as joint coordinator of the center since 2015. He supervised the UGC UP projects on special education and rehabilitation of the disabled students, and also the university projects on disability studies 2016 and 2019. At present, Dr. Mandal is undergoing 2 projects on translation under UGC RUSA and Life of Rabindranath in English translation he has done, and transnationalism, and Global South. Tagore in English, Essays of Decolonization. Professor Mandal co-authored a book with Dr. Sujit Kumar Mondal on education and awareness among persons with disability in the Sundarban areas, a survey of 4 selected blocks, Jadavpur University Press, 2017. He has also published an edited book on higher education, university, and excellence, the Bengal narrative from Jadavpur University in 2017. Professor Mandal has been acting as the editor of the UGC listed International Research Journal Persons with Special Needs and Rehabilitation Management since 2015 and has already published 2 volumes of the journal. So Professor Mandal regularly participates also in socio-political educational debates in various local and national electronic media. So today, Professor Mandal will be delivering his lecture on the bird and the Bollywood, Shakespeare in Indian popular culture on this topic. So, sir, we would like you to just take over the panel and just deliver your insightful lecture on the particular topic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pratyush. It's a pleasure to be here in the Department of School of Languages, Amit University, Chhattisgarh. My special thanks. Can you hear me? Am I audible to all of you? I think there are
Yes,
over
sir.
100 participants at the moment. So it's a huge success for this program. And I congratulate you in the beginning for this kind of success. I mean, normally we don't see this number of participants in such programs because these have become these days merely a formality. But I think the number of participants in this program, I think, is quite huge. So big round of applause to the organizers. Dr. Islam, thank you very much for your persuasion, despite my extremely busy schedule, because I am chairing the Department of English at the moment, and we are terribly occupied with the admission procedure at the moment. But because of your persuasion, I'm here. And to the participants, it won't be really a formal lecture as such. We'll have some what you can possibly call interactive sessions, along with some clippings of some of the Bollywood blockbusters, as it were, or what you call masala Bollywood movies made of Shakespeare. And my focus will obviously be on the trilogy by Vishal Bharadwaj, beginning with Maqbul to Haidar, Macbeth, Othello, and Hamlet. Largely, I'll focus on the last two of the quote-unquote trilogy, which, as many of you might be knowing, which is now quite well known, not just in the subcontinent, but even outside the subcontinent. It is hugely popular in Western academia, both in the US and Europe. Vishal Bharadwaj, I think, is almost a household name in all the South Asian Studies department across the globe. So my focus will largely be on the last two movies by Vishal Bharadwaj, Omkara and Haidar. Of course, I'll be talking tangentially about Maqbul as well. Now, the title of my, what do you call, quite unorganized lecture is I think, The Bard and the Bollywood and Shakespeare in Indian popular culture. It needs to be slightly elaborated upon it, what exactly I mean by the term popular culture, and how, to a large extent, despite you have a very popular medium of communication of Shakespeare's plays since when? Since 1830s, should we say, in India, when you have some kind of an informal theater in Calcutta to enact Shakespeare's plays, though they would not be played in entirety, but some scenes of Shakespeare's plays will be enacted by Indians since 1830s, and of course that will intrinsically lead us to the issue of the beginning of English literary studies in India, which happened with the foundation of the iconic college known as the Hindu College in Calcutta way back in 1817. I think all of you are aware of that history, how much the Indian contingent of the intelligentsia, led by none other than Ram Mohan Rai, very famous name even outside Bengal, and Tagore's grandfather by the name of Dharukanath Tagore, how they were instrumental in bringing in English studies to India, quite contrary to our perception about the Orientalist or the East India Company government in the beginning of 19th century. They were not very keen to introduce Shakespeare in the curriculum. The syllabus committee would be headed by Bethune, a very famous name, Drinkwater Bethune. And he was not really happy to introduce Shakespeare. And the apparent reason was very clear, that Shakespeare is dealing with immoral acts in his play, at times even hovering around the idea of obscenity, and these cannot be treated, this cannot be taught to the native, because we are here to upgrade the morals of the native. And if we teach Shakespeare's play, then that purpose will be entirely defeated. So I think only one, you'd be astounded to know that only one unnamed tragedy of Shakespeare would be taught till 1840. So from 1817 to 1840, only one unnamed tragedy of Shakespeare would be taught, along with some poems by other writers. But that's not as English literary studies, but that will be part of a subject called English history and literature. So history and literature, English history and literature would be taught together. And but the irony is that, even within that very limited framework of English studies, if you can call it, what the Indian students did, I think, was remarkable. They excelled so much in Shakespeare, especially in the acting skills, and also even at times in the writing skill in examinations, that it encouraged the Anglicists, led by none other than Macaulay, to do what he did in 1835. So in a way, this is rather a very interesting kind of a narrative that was already planted by Gauri Viswanathan and Ania Lumba way back in late 1919. that it was almost a kind of imposed thing upon us. That's not the entire part of the story. That's only one part of the story. We did have an active role to play while talking about invitation of English literary studies, and also along with that, you have the beginning of a journey called Shakespeare, or the undisputed bird, from whose world, whose sky, sun never goes down. Shakespeare remains with us even after the independence, and the passage for Shakespeare, I think, was quite smooth enough. So just a brief introduction of the kind of popularity that Shakespeare enjoyed, even within the very limited scope of the literary studies in India when it began way back in the beginning of 19th century. And thereafter, you might have heard about Vaishnav Charan Adhi. In fact, the text that I am talking about, Othello, one of the very popular texts, almost uninterruptedly popular text for the last 2 centuries. Captain D.L. Richardson started teaching it first in 1840 with his humongous anthology called Selections of British Writers from Chaucer to the present day. While again, you will be astounded to know that almost 309 pages were attributed to Shakespeare out of 1600 pages, where he had around 103 British writers. So among 103 British writers, Shakespeare was given the most prominent places, where 4 tragedies, King Lear, Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth, 4 what you call fabulous tragedies, along with 1 comedy, As You Like It, and some portions of some portions of Henry IV will be taught, and also some poems. And that was in 1840. So look at the remarkable change from 1827, when we had the first what you call record of syllabus of English literary studies. In 1820 syllabus, which was made by Bethune, as I mentioned, it had only 1 unnamed tragedy and some poems by other writers. But in 1840, when Captain D.L. Richardson, a very famous name of Shakespeare teaching in India, under the instruction of Macaulay, when he made the government anthology, you had almost 4 tragedies, 1 comedy, 1 half comedy, and some sonnets by 15 sonnets, in fact, sonnets by Shakespeare, and 309 pages were attributed to him. So that really suggests the kind of popularity Shakespeare started to enjoy since 1830s, and to be more specific, since 1840. So 1840 syllabus had Othello, Macbeth, Hamlet, and King Lear. There's a different story about King Lear. King Lear was prescribed after 1852. There is another reason, and I have written a paper on that, why King Lear was not taught throughout the 19th century, or maybe rarely taught King Lear. And it was not even responded to by the Indian intelligentsia in terms of their translation, adaptations, or appropriation. Whereas the other 3 tragedies, Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth, would be not just taught in the curriculum regularly, but the Indian intelligentsia from 1850s onwards, they would, even not just in Bengal, even outside Bengal from 1860s, they would start translating those texts regularly. Either you translate them or adapt them or appropriate them. For example, I think Hamlet, as I'll be mentioning, Hamlet had 3 to 4 adaptations within a span of 10 years, even only in Bengal. Othello had equal number of adaptations in Bengal within a span of, again, 10, 15 years. So, and those adaptations would be at times enacted in the theater of Bengal in 1870s, 1880s, till a new kind of renaissance of Indian theater began in the hands of none other than Girish Chandra Ghosh. Even Girish Chandra Ghosh, as you know, that was quite fond of Shakespeare. He started translating Shakespeare at quite early age of 21, and then at the age of 28, he tried to translate Macbeth, which was an unsuccessful attempt. Ultimately, in 1893, he translated Macbeth, which very interestingly did not work very well on the stage, but those are completely different story altogether. The point that I wish to make here is this, that these 3 plays, Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello, they have been enjoying almost an uninterrupted popularity for nearly 170 years, since 1850s, in Indian classroom, Indian theater, and even in the minds of Indian people. The people, as you know, that if you look at look at the history of Indian theater, especially in Bengal, since 1880s, that theater would be extremely popular medium, where nearly all classes of people would be watching the theater, especially the people who are not even literate, because you don't need to be a literate to enjoy a Shakespeare's play in translation, or even even in any play for that matter. You don't need to learn the language. So even the illiterate people at times would be thronging around Shakespeare since 1880s. And actually, Nandi Bhatia has a very interesting book on this particular issue about the popularity of Indian theatre and how it became, very interestingly, a space to articulate Indian nationalism. In fact, my friend did not mention about the book that I'm writing. It is about it is going to come out by the end of this year. It is about Shakespeare and Indian nationalism, how Shakespeare both positively and negatively promoted the idea of Indian nationalism since late 19th century in the hands of those Indian intelligentsia. So just a brief background of the popularity of these three particular texts. Now, what is popular culture at the moment, I think, in India? What do you understand by this, and why the principal mode of communication of Shakespeare to India, and that is theater to the people, why it is gradually declining in the country since 1880s, though there's some kind of resurgence in Bengal and other parts of India, but it cannot reach the kind of popularity that the filmic adaptation of Shakespeare could, enjoy at the moment. I mean, if you look at the history of last 20 years of Indian cinema, I have got serious problem with the term Bollywood, but even though it is now an accepted term, even if you call Bollywood cinema, if you look around the history of Bollywood cinema in the last 20 years, you'll have, I think, a plethora of adaptations. I mean, the same play, Romeo Juliet, has been adapted thrice within a span of 5 years, twice in Bollywood. First, it was in 2012 in the form of Ishak Jade, played by debutant Arjun Kapoor, and not so well known Pariniti Chopra. Ishak Jade was a very interesting appropriation. I will call appropriation again. It's not exactly an adaptation, though the filmmaker would not name Shakespeare to be the principal source of the inspiration. Ishak Jade, it went to become a huge hit. It was a very low budget movie, as you know, but it became a serious hit. And then within a span of 2 years, you had Golioka Rashlila in the form of Golioka Rashlila Ramlila by a very reputed director, Sanjay Leela Bansali, who, by the way, acknowledged his debt to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. That again became a huge hit within a span of 2 years. And if that is not enough, we had Aparna Sen making Ashinagar in Bengal in 2015. So 3 back-to-back appropriations, adaptations, whatever you call, because these terms are more often than not interchangeably used, but they are not the same term. They have got serious qualitative difference, which I have written in my book. But there is no scope of talking about that in this particular lecture. But I would love to call them appropriations, where Shakespeare, the global icon, is completely recursed to cater to the need of the Indian contingent, and at times even local, regional audiences, like in case of Ashinagar by a very reputed film director, Aparna Sen. Very interestingly, if you look at the history of both Ishak Jade and Ashinagar, they had the similar kind of storyline, where both Romeo and Juliet, their Indian counterparts, were coming from 2 different religions, Hindus and Muslim. Very interestingly, Ashinagar did not work, but Ishak Jade worked. I mean, what could be the reason? I have explained in my book why Ashinagar, despite being made by a very reputed film director and played by one of the superstars of this part of the country, it did not really work in Bengal. that intercommunal classes, because of that, love affair leading to their marriage between, Romeo and Juliet and their Indian counterparts, that did not really work. But Ishak Jade in North Indian, environment, it worked. It was a huge hit. I mean, you had the issue of honor killing, you had the issue of intercommunal classes, intercommunal marriages, how their families opposed that intercommunal marriages. I think that worked hugely in North India. And Ishak Jade, I think that's why it was a huge hit. And Ram Leela, Golio Ka Rashliya Ram Leela was again an entirely different kind of story. And I do not really need to go into the detail of all those adaptations. You have a very, comprehensive book by Jonathan Gill Harris by the name of How a Firangi Writer Became an Indian, Shakespeare, Masala Shakespeare in India. It's a very interesting book by Jonathan Gill Harris, a very recently published book, where he is talking about all the adaptations, appropriations of Shakespeare since 1960s. In fact, 1960 would mark the beginning of Shakespeare's adaptation on Indian cinema. It was done first by a very reputed director from this part of the country by the name of Ajay Kaur in the form of Saptapati, though it was made of a novel, played by Uttam Kumar and Suchitra Sen. I think it's very well known, not just in India, but not just in Bengal, but outside Bengal. And then you have, the adaptation of Comedy of Errors in the form of Bhranti Bilas in Bengali, which was remade in Bollywood and played by none other than Kishore Kumar, Do Duni Char. Interestingly, Kishore Kumar, Do Duni Char, which was in 1868, it did not really work. But then, of course, within a span of 12, 13 years, you had Angur, played by the great actor Sanjeev Kumar, and and there is the comedian. I just don't remember. The comedian is very famous comedian. Name will come to me very soon. So Sanjeev Kumar's Angur was a huge hit. I mean, it went on to bag Filmfare Award in 1983. Both the actors they got the Filmfare Award. So they're the kind of popularity of those movies. And then, of course, you have Kamat Se Kamat, comes some kind of remake of Romeo Juliet, which was the launching pad for the two future superstars, Samir Khan and Juhi Chawla, which was made in early 90s, in the summer of early 90s. It was a huge hit. But very interestingly, again, Shakespeare's name was not mentioned as the inspiration behind the story. Now, since I'll be talking about only Bishal Bharadwaj, why Bishal Bharadwaj is really making Shakespeare known to the world. I mean, unlike Mansur Khan, unlike, in fact, Angur was positively dedicated to Shakespeare by Gulzar. Gulzar was dedicating Angur to Shakespeare, saying that you are actually the boss of comedy. So Shakespeare's picture was there both in the beginning and in the end of that very huge hit, Angur. So Gulzar was acknowledging Shakespeare, but Mansur Ali Khan and making Kamat Se Kamat Tak did not really acknowledge Shakespeare. Neither did Ishak Jade, the remake of Romeo and Juliet. What could be the reason behind it? And perhaps they had some kind of anxiety that Indian audience might not be familiar with all the Shakespeare. Indian audience, obviously, I'm talking about, again, Indian, what we call subaltern or lower middle class and upper middle class contingent of people. They may not be quite familiar with the Shakespeare story, and that's why they perhaps had to do away with acknowledging, Shakespeare's death in their storyline. But as I mentioned, Sanjay Leela Bhansali did acknowledge, and so did Bishal Bharadwaj in all three of his films. So since my time is limited, I'll be focusing only on Bishal Bharadwaj's, the trilogy, especially the last two, Omkara and Haidar. As I mentioned that, if we begin with Othello, I mean, Maqbool, I think my previous speaker, I could get this much that I did not listen to the entire lecture, but was trying to suggest why Bollywood is replicating these very famous tragedies in a very syllable kind of, quote unquote, syllable kind of an atmosphere. Like in case of Makbul, you had that, very infamous underworld story somewhere located in Mumbai or in Maharashtra. In Othello, Omkara, you have that dingy North Indian hinterland of mafia politics nexus. Uh, and also in Haidar, I think one of the most talked about global stories, Kashmir and insurgency in Kashmir. Why these backgrounds are being used to depict, I think, three of the most iconic tragedies or tragic heroes of all time. I mean, that is the question that largely are be hovering around while talking about these three movies, especially the last two, Omkara and Haidar. Why Bishal Bharadwaj had to choose to replicate the Macbeth story, the underworld, aspect or underlying narrative or underworld narrative of Maharashtra and Mumbai. Why? I mean, what kind of a method that he was applying? I mean, was Macbeth a kind of indiscriminate, ruthless criminal as it is shown in Makbul, whose only quality, I think, is his loyalty to the boss Duncan or his Vaishab, and a tremendous forgiving lover. Uh, the poetry is missing. Macbeth's guilt is missing. Macbeth's other qualities are missing. As a terrific soldier, a protector of uh, the state of Scotland, terribly admired people, even within the quote unquote legitimate society or legitimate state. And then, as I mentioned, all those great poetry, eliciting Macbeth's, inner guilt, Macbeth's dichotomy, why those things are missing in the filming adaptation. And he has to make Makbul a veritable villain on screen. I mean, was it deliberate? Was it a ploy to catch the audience, not just of the India, but outside? That look, this is the dingy mafia, underworld world that we are depicting, or it was a kind of what I would possibly like to believe, a kind of unconscious travesty of those great tragic heroes. I mean, let us not lose sight of the fact that all these three tragic heroes, they have been revered across the globe, as I mentioned, for nearly 200 years now. And to make such travesty of all those tragic heroes, I think would take a serious, labor on the part of Bishal Bharadwaj. So was it a conscious travesty of those Shakespeare's great tragic heroes, that all these, these three tragic heroes, I mean, Macbeth, veritable villain, Omkara, again, what is the quality of Omkara? I mean, look at the kind of fate Othello is meeting in case of Omkara. A tremendous poet in the beginning of the play, Othello, tremendous orator, great fighter, and a very passionate lover. I mean, all those qualities are combined only in one quality, that he is a serious sharpshooter, terrible sharpshooter, kills people at will to win election. And perhaps the only quality of his is that he breaks law at will. And Haidar, again, Haidar begins with a very interesting story of a boy who is studying in a North Indian university to become what he is, and then is becoming a veritable militant, a terrorist, killing people at will. So I mean, was without of course any any proper reflection on Hamlet's procrastination, Hamlet poetry, and the kind of task that Hamlet was trying to perform by trying to order Denmark. That story is completely absent. So what could be the possible reason that Bishal Bharadwaj had to do this? Was it a kind of deliberate attempt to choose these quote unquote spicy syllable theme to popularize his movie, or was it a kind of unconscious travesty of all those Shakespearean great tragic heroes, a kind of what he call, even through a mimic, even through parody, you actually try to dethrone that colonial icon in the name of Shakespeare. So, Omkara, as I mentioned, is admittedly, he calls it an adaptation of Shakespeare. In the beginning itself, he calls it an adaptation. Obviously, we do not expect the qualitative difference between an appropriation and adaptation from someone like Michel Bardbaj. These are completely different, and as quite possibly explained elaborately by Thomas Cartley in his book Shakespeare Reposition, where appropriation is a much liberal and greater task, where you have more liberty to actually go beyond the storyline and you try to appropriate a global icon or a great icon to suit your local purpose, where it's almost an aggressive way of writing back to that global or global/colonial international icon. That is appropriation. And adaptation is much more an emulative or an insipid task of imitating that particular writer or great writer. So this to briefly make you the distinction between adaptation and appropriation. But Michel Bardbaj calls it an adaptation, which he is not actually making. He is completely appropriating Shakespeare's Othello. Is recasting to suit the purpose of that, as I mentioned, that dingy mafia land of an undisclosed location somewhere in North India of the 21st century. But very interestingly, he remained reasonably faithful to the essence of the Othello story. But as I mentioned, it is quite baffling why an extraordinary soldier, an outstanding poet, orator, and a passionate lover, a far more fair than black army general could be turned from the very beginning of the film. Of course, Othello also is turning to a veritable killer, but that's only from the middle of the play. But here in the movie, we find Omkara from the very beginning of the film. He's actually a hardcore criminal whose only quality seems to be loyalty to his political boss. He wins election for him by threats and intimidation in an undisclosed, as I mentioned, region of North India. Some answer to this riddle, I think, may be found in what is being mentioned by Jyotsna Singh in a very recent book by her, Post-Colonial Shakespeare, where she's talking about the idea of appropriation. And she says that what does it constitute? It constitutes appropriation being cognizant of tension, and I'm quoting, constitutes appropriation being cognizant of tensions between venerations or resistance toward the original work. So veneration and resistance, it's happening at the same time. Very interesting. And almost, Cartley is, adding to that it happens almost in a kind of quasi-Freudian anxiety of influence state. So Michel Bardbaj might not be aware of what extraordinary thing that he is achieving. So he's trying to admire Shakespeare, but admiration and resistance is happening at the same time while he is making those radical interventions into that very famous popular Shakespeare narrative Othello. The radical interventions in the form of Omkara. That's what they're saying. And how she goes again, Jyotsna Singh, how such appropriations, and this is very important, I quote, mediate between the elite Western intellectual associations with the plays and the local non-metropolitan cultures and knowledge of Indian subcontinent. And this is very interesting. It's almost Omkara is mediating between these 3-4 classes of audiences. You have Western intellectual associations. We are byproducts of that, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to criticize Michel Bardbaj for not being quite faithful to that storyline of Othello. Othello's tremendous quality, Othello's poetry, oratory, his fighting skill, his passionate love for Desdemona. I think those qualities are not really. Passionate love is somewhat there. I mean, in Omkara, that I'll talk about later on. But the other qualities are entirely missing. So because we are product of Western critical thoughts, and that's why this film mediates between Western intellectual associations with the plays and also local and, more importantly, non-metropolitan cultures, which I meant by popular culture. That's a culture that is, I think, in popular in the non-metros, in the suburbs, or even in the rural parts of the country. So it's catering to all three classes of audience at the same time. And that's why I think this has become such a huge point of talking for all of us. It is taught in many parts of the globe, all the three remakes of Shakespeare's Makbul, Umkara, and Othello. So I think this is something. This may have been such kind of a fantastic design on the part of the director to emulating Shakespeare consciously, saying this is a tribute to Shakespeare, but at the same time reverse the original narrative to suitably describe his own national, regional, and even local sentiments. And this is something that is appropriation. It is not adaptation, which Vishal Bharadwaj obviously will not be theoretically so sound to understand. This is not an adaptation at all. This is appropriation. And it must have taken boundless courage and imagination for the Indian filmmaker to transmute a widely celebrated noble Moor into a veritable mafia or a Bahubali, as I mentioned, who shoots, kills, breaks law at will in a Hindi hinterland of 21st century India. And herein lies the precise contentious issue about this otherwise fine appropriation of Shakespeare play. The point that I wish to make, and I repeat again, that it has been supercharged, highly spicy, easily marketable political narrative of one region of contemporary India, which is consciously appropriated to relate to a play like Othello, where what mattered most is not really politics or state, but race, gender, and domestic violence. I think these are the principal issues of Othello, which are somehow recast in Omkara. Of course, that doesn't mean that Omkara is not really dealing with the equivalence of Indian equivalence of race, that is caste. Is very much there in the movie. But mafia politics or Bahubali Raj, suffused with indiscriminate violence, shooting spree, has pushed back those highly contentious themes, that is caste, gender, and domestic violence, which is nonetheless very popular themes of Indian cinema or Indian popular sentiment is very much there: caste, gender, domestic violence, or even intercommunal issues. These things are extremely popular, and somehow Vishal Bharadwaj is unable to replicate these themes in the movies, which he had the scope of, because as I mentioned, the original storyline was largely dealing with these three issues: gender, race, and domestic violence. Okay, I'll briefly talk. Then I play the most outstanding part of this particular movie, and I think this is why Vishal Bharadwaj, I think, exceeds Shakespeare as well. Towards the last part of the movie, where you have the fantastic intervention at the most radical and sensational moment that is taking place when Indu/Emilia is killing her husband, Langra and Iago. I think that is the most radical intervention. And let us watch that particular clipping and look at the anger on the face of Indu/Emilia, and how she kills her husband. I think that is the most fascinating. Let me share the screen if I can. That is the most fascinating. Yeah, what is that? Could you please watch it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think this is the most fascinating intervention in the entire movie, where I think Vishal Bharadwaj exceeds even the bard as well, Shakespeare as well. I mean, look at the kind of feminist anger if you look at the eyes of Emilia Indu. I mean, before killing of her husband, look at her eyes. I mean, almost hitting back at the whole idea of patriarchy, how it functions in Indian subcontinent. I think this incredible intervention into Shakespearean play by Vishal Bharadwaj, which deserves, I think, unlimited accolades from all of us, albeit almost on an uneventful presentation of the caste and gender issue in the play, especially the caste, which is, I think, a very seminal important aspect of Indian culture or Indian ethos, so to say, even at the present. So now I'll come to the last part of my lecture on Hyder. I'll not really talk much about Maqbul because I have not really have had the opportunity of preparing much on Maqbul, but this much I could say about Maqbul is again the same kind of storyline. But Hyder, I think is the most remarkable appropriation of Bishal Bharadwaj, where despite the fact that the storyline was quite well known in case of Hamlet and Shakespeare, it became I think interposed or juxtaposed with a very moving account of the insurgency and violence in early 90s. First an account by Basharat Pierce, and it's an account, as you know, all of you know, that Curfew Night, a frontline memoir of life, love, and war in Kashmir, which came out in 2010. A very important document about early 1990s insurgent Kashmir and the violence perpetrated on either sides of the fence. I think that Curfew Night by Basharat Pierce, I think, is intermixed with Shakespeare's Hamlet. I think this is a remarkable task by Bishal Bharadwaj. I think he's taken the Hamlet story to a different level altogether. As I said, in the mid-90s of Kashmir during the height of insurgency, and it is intertextualized mainly with Basharat Pierce's spine-chilling first-hand account of the life in Kashmir Valley at that point of time, and how that is brilliantly interposed, reconfigured with Hamlet's rotten Denmark, with ruined valleys strewn with expansive graveyards on the one hand, an unweeded garden of Hamlet or ravaged paradise on earth. Again, Jyotsna Singh writes eloquently about this particular appropriation of Bishal Bharadwaj in her 2019 book. And she has convincingly argued about the multiple layers of Hyder's negotiations with Hamlet, that any repetition, I think, of the same in this particular lecture would be completely redundant. Nonetheless, the journey of a young man from a gentle, studious college student to an unwilling militant, and how it finds chilling resonances with even the contemporary reality of the valley needs to be told in a nutshell. This will also somewhat bolster our understanding of how Shakespearean narrative has been simultaneously adhered to and transcended with. This is very important. So adherence and transcendence, reverence and resistance are taking place at the same time. So this, if you look at the storyline of Hyder, you'll understand how Bishal Bharadwaj is revering Shakespeare and also at the same time reversing Shakespeare's storyline. The dead King Hamlet is present. A dead king of Hamlet in the original is recast as a soft-spoken, sensitive Dr. Hilal Mir, is betrayed by his brother Khurram Mir, Claudius, to the Indian military for secretly extending medical aid to a dreaded terrorist. He is apprehended and his wife Gajala Gatut taken out of the house before the soldiers blows it off along with those terrorists. Hyder Hamlet rushes back from his university located in the north capital region of the country and inquires about his father's disappearance, only to discover his mother happily remarried with his uncle. With the help of his childhood sweetheart and a journalist, Arshia Ophelia, Hyder successfully searches for his father, only to be acquainted with a strange separatist figure, Rohudu, was played by the iconic Iqbal Khan. He claimed to have known Hilal, who before his execution, as per the dictate of his uncle, had told him to pass the messages to Hyder to avenge his death. The strange militant indoctrinates Hyder into terrorism. He kills Khurram's police officer, Parvez Polonius, who was also Arshia's father, leading to her trauma and subsequent suicide. Meanwhile, after learning about her husband's killing, Gajala also realizes her mistake, contacts Ruhudur and turns into a suicide bomber, killing the militia raised by Khurram, but leaving him alive. Hyder rushes to the site of the blast in an attempt to save his mother, but finds grievously injured Khurram, who he too lives to suffer. The film ends with Haider walking away, ignoring his uncle's repeated pleas to kill him amidst the heap of half-burned dead bodies on the snow-laden streets of picturesque Kashmir Valley. I'll play the last scene and then I'll explain. I'll play the last scene of Haider and then explain. So I need to go back to the clipping again. Okay. Yeah, could you watch the clipping, the clipping?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Look at the radical intervention again in the end of the film. And despite Claudia's repeated pleas that kill me, and he is left to live. In fact, that was also the storyline of many 19th century adaptations of Hamlet, where there is no really death of either Hamlet or Claudius at the end of such adaptations or appropriations. Look at the kind of contrast, the picturesque Kashmir, the beauty of Kashmir, how it is shown with almost the last scenes of Hamlet, which is where the stage becomes almost a veritable slaughterhouse at the end of Shakespeare's narrative. So even a plain reading of the story, the beginning storyline, except the ending, it will suggest that Shakespeare, Vishal Bharadwaj has taken a lot from the Shakespeare narrative. But nonetheless, he exceeds, he transcends that narrative quite remarkably towards the end of the film. I take 3 minutes to end my lecture. And do you have time to go? 2-3 minutes? Okay. Raising the problematics involved in the politics and poetics of appropriation. Again, Jyotsna Singh explains how the film, that is Haidar, moves beyond the familiar issue of a veneration and resistance toward the original. Instead, in Hamlet, she argues, Shakespeare's plays is refracted through post-colonial history of the subcontinent with a close-up ravaged beauty of Kashmir. Hamlet, in her opinion, provides a distinct emotional language to understand the disintegration of the characters caught in sundry relationship in the midst of betrayal and violence in Haidar. Without any doubt, of course, without any doubt, the film has remained the best of Bharadwaj's trilogy on Shakespeare, with nearly flawless reconfiguration of the Hamlet story into the man-made hell out of the God-created heaven on earth. Nonetheless, one may find it difficult to escape the absence of super subtle dynamics of unresolved inner conflicts of Hamlet, the angst, procrastination of that quintessential tragic figure in Hamlet, manifest through that iconic speeches like to be or not to be. Hamlet's predicament in the original story stems not merely owing to his father's murder by his uncle, but maternal betrayal, but also because of the profound political problem in the state of Denmark, which he finds out of joint and wants to set in order. But Haidar's narrative starts mainly on personal level and getting automatically imbricated into the political realm of intensely insurgent Kashmir in 1990s. This may also explain the radically ingenious way of ending the narrative, as I had shown, where both Haidar and Khurram leave suggesting that, unlike the original play, the film does not forecast any closure of the personal issue or restoration of political order in the end. In Hamlet, you have the restoration of political order at the end, but not in Haidar. Realistically, Bharadwaj could not have afforded to continue Kashmir as Denmark, as the problems of insurgency continued, despite in a lesser degree when he was making the film in 2014. It was released in 2015, but it started to be made in 2014. Here lies the deliberate choice of mid-90s Kashmir as the backdrop, which remained through the present and by way of Bard's play. It finds a deep connect, not just nationally, but globally. Read from such perspective, I think Haidar appears to be a remarkable film which simultaneously localizes a global icon, and also at the same time globalize the plight of local people in violence-struck region of a South Asian country, that is Kashmir. The film's thumping box office success, smashing over 530 million Indian rupees against the budget of 350 million, suggests once again how the bird recurs such emotively burning topics, catches the attention of the nation at large. This is the popular appeal of Shakespeare we still have in our Indian subcontinent. Thank you so much. If you have any questions and queries, I'll be happy to answer them one by one.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
You have really taken us to a very magical journey through your mesmerizing narrative of how Bollywood cinema and literature can be clubbed together, sir. And you have really shown us how Shakespeare after 1960s has been Indianized in our local context, in our Indianized context. And like many of course, there would be many viewers who would be a great fan of Heather, and I am no different. And I was very glad to see the clipping of Heather and how Heather's madness has also been interpreted, misinterpreted, as you
Yes.
told, adherence and transcendence of Shakespeare. So, now, thank you so much, sir. So before we go to the question, there is one announcement for the participant. So dear participant, a quiz form has been provided to you, which has to be filled up by the end of the day. And for tomorrow, you will be provided a feedback form, which you have to fill up tomorrow, so that the certification process can take place tomorrow. Tomorrow, you have to fill it up. So, sir, there is one question
Yes, please.
regarding this particular context. From
Yeah.
this question is from Ananya Sakar, and the question reads, can we say that the Indian cinema is influenced by bourgeois culture and the presumed harbinger of modernity?
Yeah, of course, of course. The very medium is a bourgeois medium. I think, without any shade of doubt, Indian culture is extremely influenced by bourgeois culture. Nonetheless, in any such art, what happens, at times art gets autonomy, and it at times gets appropriated by what you call the populace or the popular culture. How a global icon and international icon for the last how many years? Nearly 200 years. And by the way, Shakespeare was born as a discipline. I said discipline in India. I know we have given birth to the discipline called English literature in 1830s. And so the English literature was born in India. So it's for the last 200 years, Shakespeare, a global icon, an international giant of literature, is being localized, popularized to cater to the taste of even the illiterate, non-elite audience of North India or across the country. I think it suggests that this art, despite the fact that it's bourgeois art, it is appropriated by the populace or the popular culture.
Thank you so much, sir. I think Ananya's questions has been rightly addressed. So since Heather and Shakespeare is my personal favorite, so I have one simple question, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Despite how Shakespeare has been presented in Bollywood, or how he has been Indianized, or how he has been Westernized, so what is your take on the madness of Hamlet, sir, when it comes to the madness of Hamlet? Because it has been widely interpreted, misinterpreted in the text and the Bollywood and Hollywood and everywhere, in every Indian and Western and abroad and European context. What is your take on, particularly on the madness of Hamlet? What was the intention of Shakespeare behind the madness of Hamlet, and what is your particular take on this?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer, I tell you, because people have been writing about this for a very long period of time, whether it is deliberate, whether it is real, whether it was a strategy to sort of, understand the guilt of his uncle, to have some sort of evidence. We really don't know. I think you need to have almost a kind of quasi-Freudian mind to understand whether Hamlet's madness is real or fake, right? And so I think is true about Heather. It's very extremely difficult to really come to a conclusion that Hamlet was not really mad. It's extremely difficult because the kind of thing that he is doing would otherwise make us feel that he was really mad. At the same time, he wanted to somehow get some clinching evidence of his father killing to somehow satisfy that he needs to do what he does in the play, not really exactly in the movie, because in the movie, Khurram is left to live. He's not being killed at all. So I think, as it's extremely difficult question, people are still elaborating on that, whether it was madness is real or not. I really can't answer in definitive words that it was real madness or a fake madness. Very difficult. Madness is such a thing which at times very difficult to explain. And that's why you have a very interesting book by Foucault, Madness in Civilization. Who are mad and who are not is very difficult to actually understand or actually come to a proper conclusion.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Mandal. Actually, by the ambiguity and mystery behind the madness
Exactly.
of Hamlet, I can conclude that Shakespeare has really shaken the spear by his writing. So
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Thank you so much,
Thank
Professor
you. Thank
Mandal.
you.
And it was really a very engaging and intellectually wonderful session with you regarding this particular context of the Bard and the Bollywood and how you connect Bollywood and the literature, especially Shakespeare. So it was really great, sir. So Amity University in general and Amity School of Languages in particular, thank you for attending to
Yeah.
this
Thank you.
session,
Thank you
and
so much.
thanks
I'll
for
file, I'll file,
finding
I'll file more about this in my book that is coming up in next 2-3 months from Routledge, Taylor and Francis. This is on Shakespeare and Indian nationalism. Okay.
Definitely, sir. We are looking forward
So
to.
there's just one more question.
Yeah, please
One
go
more
ahead.
question, if you would like to take
Yes,
it.
yes,
Like
yes, yes.
it is from Miss SD Chakraborty.
Yeah.
How would you relate music in Bharadwaj's trilogy in appropriating Shakespeare?
No, this is completely different intervention. I mean, that has been happening since 1817. When Girish Chandra Ghosh first infused music, dance, drama in Shakespearean mode. So I think it's a quite radical intervention. And very interestingly, initially, the Western audience would be taken aback by this kind of intervention, but now they are, I think, coming to terms with it and they're accepting quite well. I mean, what is very problematic, and I did not have the time to really look into that. Bollywood at times is identified with India. That is the problematic area of South Asia Studies Department across the globe, whether it is Harvard, Cambridge, Berkeley, wherever you have a South Asia Studies Department, they somehow equate Bollywood with India at times. That simply is not done. But musical intervention, I think it's really localizes, it adds a more local flavor, dance, drama, like what you have in Omkara, all kinds of that chammak chalo like dance, which is correctly called masala. That's really Bollywood masala. And to add that into Shakespeare, I think is remarkable. But very ironically, my dear friend, Shakespeare was not really an elite Shakespeare when he was writing those plays. Shakespeare was popular Shakespeare in the early part of 17th century. And you might be knowing that Shakespeare even at times had to compete with bear baiting, which is a very popular sport during late 16th and early 17th century. Shakespeare had to compete with the audience attending bear baiting and rather than attending his theater. So Shakespeare, when he was writing, he was not really an elite icon at all. He was a popular play. Popular, I mean, popular here is a loaded term. He was writing for the populace, for the people. And if you go to Shakespeare theater history, you'll find that all the classes of society, all the classes, beginning from the labor class to the royal, they were all watching together Shakespeare's play. So that really suggests the kind of, you can call, reincarnation of popular Shakespeare's in Indian Bollywood or Indian cinema, where now actually is catering to all the classes of people, the intellectual byproducts like us. We keep criticizing Bharadwaj for not being really bringing in Hamlet. In fact, I wrote in my book that Hyder was criticized by Anjan Datto in Kolkata so much that he made a retort by his own film Hemanta in Bengali. He's saying that everyone is talking about Kashmir, the beautiful Kashmir, the pictures, but why is Hamlet here? And I mean, all those great speeches by Hamlet. So Anjan Datta, again, a very noted film director and singer, and Aminul might be knowing him, and he'll explain who is Anjan Datta. He made his rejoinder in the form of a film called Hemanta in Bangla, which, by the way, did not work. Which did not work at all. Many people don't even know about Hemanta, but Hyder did work. Hemanta was much more close to Shakespeare's Hamlet, very close to Shakespeare's Hamlet with all those anxiety, angst, and dichotomy, but it didn't work. But Heather did work. I mean, that there like the distinction and how you look at Shakespeare. Shakespeare has now completely localized by such film directors in India at this point in time. He's no longer that elite icon which he was for the last 200 years. Have I explained your question?
Thank you so much, sir. There is another question
Sir?
from
Yeah,
Mr. Bisi Prasad, sir. Because, sir, you can put forward your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful lecture.
I know this person.
Yes, sir. Actually, I'm asking that. It's a very prospective question, sir. What could be the future of the bard in Bollywood? Are we going to adapt the history plays of Shakespeare, or is only limited to the tragedies?
It's very difficult to adapt the history plays of Shakespeare, though, because that is not gel with our context. I think I know Vicky. Vicky has been my scholar. It's a good question, but let me tell you, in the last 20 years, there have been at least 20 to 30 appropriations of Shakespeare. I mean, that is being narrated by Jonathan Gill Harris. Harris is a tremendous fan of both India and Shakespeare. So he's teaching, I think, in Srinagar or in some university located in North India. Jonathan Gill Harris, I think, has talked about this. In the last 20 years, you have plenty of such appropriation. I think it will continue. And as I mentioned, that in the span of 2-3 years, you have the appropriation of the same Romeo and Juliet thrice, Ishak Jade, Ram Leela, and Ashwinagar in Kolkata within the span of 3 years, between 12 and 15. And first two, I think, were huge hits. What does it suggest? The Shakespeare in such a mold, people are accepting, right? So, they may not be attending all those elite classes of yours and mine, but they are quite happy to see Shakespeare's in such avatar, such localized Indian avatar. Kamatsa was a huge hit. It is still one of the most iconic films in India. So was Ek Dijo Ke Liye, though Ek Dijo Ke Liye was slightly different from Romeo and Juliet. And even in this part of the country, in the eastern part, Bhanti Bilas is still a huge hit by Vidyasagar. And so is Angur. Angur is a huge hit by Gulzar. But I think Shakespeare's has remained and will remain, I think, one of the most talked about iconic persons to adapt, to appropriate in Indian and Bollywood cinema.
Thank you very much, sir. We are looking forward to more such adaptations and appropriations in Bollywood and the Western world. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And
Namaste.
it was really an engaging session, and Amity University in general and Amity School of Languages in particular is looking forward for more such engagement, intellectual engaging session with you in future also. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Congratulations to the organizers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Dear participants, tomorrow we shall meet at 10 o'clock. Sharp at 10, the last day of the FDP will start. And we will see you tomorrow. And thank you so much. I'm signing off from Amity School of Languages, Amity University. Thank you so much.